Hey, Walt here from StogieReview.com with another video cigar review. As you can see from the scenery going by in the background, it is another one of these rolling cigar reviews where I try to get basically a short ashes review, which is kind of a condensed review, done while I'm running errands to try to maximize the time that I have, or trying to maximize the free time that I have so that I can get multiple things done. So this time around I'm smoking the Hererra Esteli from Willie Hererra. This is a new project out of Drew Estates, made by Willie Hererra, formerly of El Titan de Bronze fame. A little while back, Willie Hererra left El Titan de Bronze and started working for Drew Estate. He spent a fair amount of time in Nicaragua, and I believe he came up with a couple of different blends that he wanted to work on, and the Hererra Esteli was the first one that's sort of come to fruition. I really don't know what the makeup of the cigar is. I would imagine there's a lot of Nicaraguan tobacco in it, but outside of that, I really can't tell you much. There's no real safe way for me to look up the information really quick, so we're just going to go with very little information in terms of how the cigar is constructed, or as far as the tobacco that makes up the cigar. The construction on this cigar is actually kind of interesting. I met up with Willie Hererra over at the Cigars International Superstore grand opening out in Hamburg, Pennsylvania last week, and we got to talking a little bit about the Hererra Esteli, his method, where he's living, you know, the events that he's got going on and things, and we started talking about the actual construction of the Hererra Esteli, and I wasn't aware of it, but it's very different from the way that Drew Estate typically makes cigars. Apparently they use the accordion method, or the base method, which is basically, you know, you take everything and you start pleating it together. You start pleating your filler tobaccos together, and you have the binder in your hand, and you just sort of build the cigar that way. He's using an N2 method, which is made up of sort of individual tobacco straws, which are then put into a double binder on the table and then rolled up. It gets a triple cap, and this form of construction is a bit different from the way Drew Estate typically makes their product, and as a result, it took some getting used to with the crew that's making the Hererra Esteli. And I thought that little bit of a story was kind of interesting. I started asking him, you know, what is the benefit one way or the other? You know, is it completely personal preference kind of a thing, you know, or is there really a benefit to one method over the other? And it kind of boiled down to personal preference, and it seemed as though he had a bit of a skew towards the old Cuban tradition methods of N2R. And his reasoning was that you have individual tobacco straws within the cigar, and it's much more difficult to wind up with a draw that is subpar, whereas if you're using the pleating method, or the base method, if you get a little bit of a twist in the filler tobacco, the entire accordion sort of twists, and you wind up with a draw that kind of sticks, or with a draw that is a little stiff, or sometimes even plugged. And you know, we got to talking a little bit further about how if the tobacco is a little wet when it's put together, it can stick, and it's more of a problem in the accordion method because there aren't those individual straws. So the whole conversation that we had was pretty interesting on the makeup of the Hererra Esteli and just the N2R method as a whole. The cigar, the size that I'm smoking is the Corona. I've had this before. Willie handed me a Corona at the IPCPR trade show back in August, and I thought it was a good cigar. It was a little sharp, a little rough around the edges, but as a whole, I thought it was a really solid medium-bodied cigar. And while we were at Cigars International, we got to talking about the different sizes, and he was kind of eager to have me try the Toro. Now, leading up to that, I was telling him that, you know, I really didn't like anything, you know, 54, 56 and beyond. It was just getting a little too much. Up to about a 56 is comfortable. You know, once you start getting 56 and beyond, it's just not my thing, and the blends start to taste a bit watered down. Whereas in the smaller stuff, it's just sharper, and just the flavor profile seems to be more vibrant. So he was kind of eager to get me to try a Toro. I was smoking an EP Carrillo at the time, and he handed me a Toro, a Robusto, and a Corona. And he told me to smoke the Toro next because he would be interested in hearing what I thought. I lit that cigar up next at the event, and it was a little bit slow starting. It really didn't start getting really good until about the halfway point. You know, good slow build up, and then when the flavors kicked in, they were fantastic. They were really rich, really vibrant. I guess the extra girth of the cigar watered down the flavors in such a way that they became more pronounced. It's kind of like taking it's like taking a little bit of scotch and adding a dash or two of water, or a drop or two of water. The flavors sort of open up. You know, the nose gets better. It was kind of like that with the Toro, and I was really impressed, which is backwards of what I typically think. I have a bias towards smaller cigars because they seem to have the better flavor profile, and in this case, the Toro was really surprising. It was very vibrant, very good, and it is probably my favorite size in the line of the sizes that I've had. This is a Corona, so I'm sort of lusting for a Toro at this point, but we'll talk about what I'm experiencing with the Corona, and we'll kind of roll through it. I'm getting really close to my next destination, so I'm going to need to turn the camera off shortly so that I can run into the local cigar shop. It really is a cigar shop. I'm not a big fan, so I don't know. I give it my jabs every chance I get, and I need to pick up some butane because I am completely, utterly out. I've been using Bic lighters for the last couple of days, and it's we need to fuel up the torches because it can be sort of cumbersome lighting a cigar with a Bic, especially in a vehicle when you got the window open. It's anyway, that's kind of my side tangent for the episode or the review. So the construction on my Hererra Esteli, it's got a nice light colored wrapper. The wrapper leaf itself looks kind of fragile. It looks a little thin. The veins are thin, they're small, very dainty, delicate looking wrapper leaf. And one of the issues that I've had with it is up toward the cap, I had a piece of tobacco get stuck to my lip. You know, it happens, you know, it's on a fairly regular basis to a lot of people. And as soon as I pulled my mouth away, expecting my lip to just pull off and no issues, I pulled some of the wrapper leaf away, which was kind of concerning, or not so much concerning, but a little bit annoying. You know, it reassured me that, or it reaffirmed that the wrapper leaf looks kind of thin and fragile. But aside from that, it's nice. You know, it's got a really good smoke volume. It's nice and thick. It coats the palate. The finish is a little on the dry side. If you've ever picked up a cigar and started puffing on it and had it speak to you, you know, there are certain cigars that just kind of tell you immediately how to pair them. You know, some cigars will tell you, you know, you'll immediately think that this cigar is good with this drink, or, you know, good with bourbon, good with scotch, good with beer, that sort of a thing. This one, as soon as I light it up, and each one that I've lit up, it just screams coffee to me. It's got a medium-bodied, it's got medium-bodied, medium flavors, and that mildly dry finish. It just speaks to me. It tells me, get a cup of coffee. So that was one of the things that I did along the way. I stopped off at Dunkin' Donuts, got a hot cup of coffee, and just it should pair wonderfully just as soon as the coffee cools down enough where I can drink it without melting my tongue. So, you know, I was talking a little bit about liking the Toro more than the Corona, and this is really evident right now. The Corona just seems really rough around the edges. It's sharp on the palate. I'm getting a minor tingle in my throat from it, and these are all things that were not apparent in the larger format, in that larger ring gauge Toro. The flavor profile is woody. There's some leather there. There's a little bit of a sort of a peppery taste in the back of the throat, which is, it's kind of giving that scratchy throat effect. And it feels like there's an abundance of nicotine here. And not so much that I'm getting shaky or feeling ill or anything like that. It just, I'm getting the impression that there is a fair amount of nicotine coming off with each puff. So, you know, sort of a halfway overview. It's a decent cigar. It's a bit rough on the palate. I shouldn't say rough. It's a little sharp on the palate, and I'm much craving the larger Toro format. You know, I think that little bit of extra that little bit of extra filler tobacco really rounds it out. And you know, in one of the few instances, I actually prefer the larger format over the smaller. Well, we're getting down towards the end of my Hererra Esteli Corona, and you know, it's kind of sharp. It's not as enjoyable as I would have hoped. It would probably be a better cigar later on in the evening. You know, just middle of the day as an afternoon cigar, it just has a bit too much bite, and it's really starting to aggravate my throat. It's starting to feel kind of raw, and I don't know whether that's a result of you know, the cigars being a little fresh. You know, I don't know what the production is like on these. I just know that they're not out yet, and or it could be the format. But what I do know is that if I were to select a Hererra Esteli to purchase later, you know, in the future, it would most definitely be the larger format. The Toro has just been fantastic. This one, while good, it's just a bit rough around the edges, and it's really not doing anything for me. You know, all the good aspects of it are being washed out by that tinge in my throat. So, good solid cigar, but I far prefer the larger format. The flavor profile is more or less the same. The woody flavor has developed more towards a defined cedar taste, and even that's getting kind of over the top. It started off as tasting just like a humidor smells. You know, that nice, rich, pleasant wood aroma, and then it just sort of builds and builds and builds, and eventually it just becomes a bit too much, paired with the, you know, the tingle in my throat. And you know, I'm actually considering tossing the cigar very, very soon. So, if you're going to take my word for it, pick the larger size. I think it's well worth, you know, the time and money investment in that Toro format rather than the Corona. So, thanks for watching. Until next time, happy smoking, and I will catch you later.